Thank you, Christine. Good morning again.
Good morning.
It's my privilege and an honor to start this series of What is Your Life? And I hope that you find mine interesting. It's been a journey. I too had a birthday this week. I'm not as old as Pastor Carver. But we share the same sign, Virgos. So that must be why we connect so good together.
I think so.
But anyway, my life started on the prairies of Kansas in a small home. There were already 8 kids in the family, so I was number 9, and I was born on September the 8th, 1932. On September the 12th, my mother passed away. That left my father with 9 kids. And within a week, we were spread all over southern Kansas. My next oldest sister, Mary, and I were placed with a sister of my mom. And the problem was that she and her husband were already in their 50s and agreed to raise us. And so I spent the next 16 or 18 years trying to figure out who I was, because we always had family gatherings where the whole family would gather and people would come up to me and say, "Oh, that guy over there is your brother." I said, "I don't have any brothers." You know, at that time, I was 5 or 6 years old. And they said, "Oh, and that over there, that's your sister." "Oh, I don't have any sister. I have one sister, and she lives with me." And so as life went on and years went on, when we would get together, someone would point out, "That's your dad." I said, "No, that's not my dad. My dad's over here." So it took me till I was 16 or 18 to really figure out who I was and to understand the family dynamics. Because after 9 years, my father remarried, and all the kids, but me and my sister, went back home. So again, it was really confusing to me to understand who everyone was and how they fit into my family. So grade school was a challenge for me. We didn't have kindergarten in those days, and started out in the first grade, went to first and second, third grade in Chinook, Kansas. Then we moved to Wichita. And ironically, and I'm going to tell you a street address, it's 733. And you'll find out later on what it means to me. But we later moved to Wichita, where I finished my elementary days and junior high school days. And when I was younger, in Chinook, Kansas, we lived at 733 South Santa Fe. In Wichita, we lived at 733 South Market. And here in Chula Vista, Shirley and I live at 733 Gretchen Road. Now, is that ironic or what? But I find it kind of interesting that all 3 places I lived have the same address. So at least I can't get lost. I hope not, anyway. I have a tag on too that tells you who I am. So if you find me out wandering, you know, I live at 733 Gretchen Road. So anyway, the junior high school years, I think it was the 5th or 6th grade, my cousin, who also lived in Wichita, and I and my sister started Sunday school, and we went to a Christian church. Now, right across the street from our house at 733 Market was a Lutheran church. But it just so happened it was a Missouri Synod, which I didn't know what the difference was. But it was a Missouri Synod, and they had a bell tower. And every Wednesday and Sunday they played the bells. Now, in junior high school, those bells fascinated me. And so I told my cousin one day, I said, boy, those bells are so pretty. He said, oh, the girl across the street from me, that's who plays them. So I said, well, you have to introduce me. So he did. So on Wednesday nights, you would find me in the back of that church, in the bell tower, watching her play the bells. And she always left the door open so I could come in. While they were having church services, I was in the back. So that was kind of interesting. My sister and I, we got along pretty good, except we had typical teenage arguments. And when it came time to go to high school, she went to one high school and I went to another. And then we had no school buses. We either had to walk or take the city bus to get to school. There were 500 in my graduating class at North High School, and only 3 kids in the high school drove cars. Unlike today, when you see the parking lots full, we only had 3 kids out of the whole high school that drove. But one story I want to tell you, when I was 16, I was out looking for a job. And I came upon a help wanted sign in an ice cream parlor. And I went in, I took the sign out of the window and went in. And I said, here, I'm here for this job. And they said, oh, we don't want a boy, we want a girl. And I said, well, hold on to this sign, I'll be right back. I went home, got my sister, and got her the job, and she had it for 2 or 3 years. So I was still looking. So I'm wandering around the streets one day, and I saw this commercial laundry. And the commercial laundry said, help wanted. I said, well, great, I'll go in there and see if I can get a job. I went in and they said, we're looking for a route driver to deliver the laundry when it's done. I said, well, I can do that. Now, you have to understand, I'm 16. I've never driven in my life. And so their first question was, do you have a driver's license? And I said, yes, it's at home. So I went home, went down to the DMV, paid 50 cents, got a driver's license, went back to the laundry, got a job. And if you would have seen me the first 2 weeks driving the truck, you would be very worried how I made it this long. And I'm just glad that the laundry couldn't see me take off in the back when I left. But I finally conquered that. I earned enough money to pay $60 for a used car. And so then I was in heaven. I could move about. My parents had a car, but this during the war years, you had to have coupons to get gas. And I couldn't get any coupons because I wasn't of the right age. But my cousin's father owned a truck stop. And he and I would sneak down there in my car and fill it up with gas at night when it was closed. And so we never got caught. In fact, this is probably the first time I'm ever telling this story. But I probably won't tell it again. So that was really my growing up years through the years of 18. At 18, I decided, well, I'm going to join the Navy and see the world. And that turned out to be a joke because for the first 2 years, I never left San Diego. And so I didn't get to see the world. Well, the third year, I went to Korea, so I did get to see it then. But the one thing that happened when I was in San Diego, which was the best thing that ever happened to me, I met my wife. But ironically, she and I double dated, her with another guy and me with another girl. And as I was driving the car, I looked in the rearview mirror. I call her my backseat girl because I was captivated by her smile, always laughing, still does. So anyway, I got up the nerve one day to ask her, would you go out with me? She said, no. I said, my God, I'm the last of the clean-cut American boys. What's the matter with you? And she said, well, you're going out with so-and-so. And I said, well, I want to go out with you. So she went and asked the other girl, do you mind if Billy and I date? And she said, no. 70 years later, we're still together. So anyway, my days in the Navy were kind of challenging. When I first got out of boot camp, I was sent to the Naval Training Center to Special Services. And one of my jobs was a driver of all things. And I drove the USO personnel around when they came to do their acts or performances. And I had Bob Hope and I had all of the dignitaries that came to town. I drove them around. But I was 18 years old. So, you know, I never thought about, hey, how about taking a picture like they're doing now? I never thought about that. Anyway, I only had one picture that was ever taken, and that was with Jack Benny. And, but that was quite a treat to drive them all around. And Shirley and I were married then, but the manager of the hobby shop at the Naval Training Center was a woman, Miss DeYoung. And Miss DeYoung had to travel to LA to meet with all the toy makers and everything. So I would have to drive her to LA. And she'd had allowed Shirley to go too. And we stayed at the fanciest hotels you can't believe. And we ate at the best restaurants in Los Angeles. And it was quite a treat, really. But again, I didn't really appreciate it at the time because I just wanted to be alone with somebody I know. And it didn't always work out that way. But that was one of my jobs. And then I was in the bunking area with Billy Casper and Gene Littler. And I don't know if those two golfers inspired me to take up the game of golf, but they were in my troop anyway. And we had a couple of baseball players that went on to play in the majors too. So it was fun. Anyway, then I got assigned to North Island in a squadron. This squadron was from Seattle, and they came down here for 2 weeks training, and it was during the Korean War. The Navy kept them down here. So that was the squadron that I was assigned to, and there were only 2 of us in the squadron that were regular Navy. The rest were all reserves. And it was very interesting because they really didn't know Navy procedures or anything else. And the other person that was regular Navy, he and I were responsible for everything. Housing, getting all the equipment on board ships and office ships, and mail. We had to fly off the ship to go get the mail. And so that was an interesting time. I don't know how many of you are pilots or have flown off of a carrier. That was quite an experience because we had prop planes at that time. We didn't have any jets. Prop planes, and the catapults were not that strong. And the ship is 90 feet off the water. That's where the flight deck is, 90 feet. And when you would take off, the ship is so, the plane is so heavy that the ship would be up here and you'd be down here where the water is. And as you're looking out the tail gunner spot, which I always rode in, I would think, well, we're going for a swim. Because there's the ship and it's bigger than we are and it's going to run over us in the process. But we always made it. We eventually lost a couple of planes in the Korean area, but that's a different story. So that was my Navy days. And I spent 4 years in, and I got out in December of 1954. And Shirley said she saw me coming across the lawn, and I had on the Navy bell-bottom pants that have the 13 buttons. I ripped them all off before I got in the house. And I said, I'm never wearing these again. And I haven't. But I went out and found a job. Wasn't driving, though. It was working for the gas and electric company. And I worked for them for 5 years. And it was a great job. I made $1.56 an hour, if you can imagine. That was better than the 50 cents I earned when I was in high school. And it was in the Navy, I got $40 every 2 weeks. And Shirley got 110, so we lived on $200 a month for 4 years. But anyway, my first year out, when I had to pay taxes, I said, whoa, what's this? So I filed a tax return, and I had to have someone do it because I didn't know what I was doing. But I had someone do it. I earned $4,000 in a year. I said, wow, I'm really rich. So 5 years I worked at the gas and electric company, and then one day, and I didn't tell Shirley at first, I said, I think I want to be a cop. And And when I finally broke the news to her, she said, "You're out of your mind."
Good job.
And so I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried. I went to the sheriff's, the marshal's office, not San Diego PD, but El Cajon, La Mesa, the marshal's office, and none of them would take me, because then they had strict rules. You had to be 5'10", and I was 5'9 3/4, because when the doctor measured you, he made sure he pulled that bar down on your head. So I was still working at the gas and electric company, and a friend of mine who I was working with had a backyard gym. So I went to the gym. He hung me upside down, stretched me, he pulled it. And I did this for months after work. I'd go to the gym and get stretched. And I turned out to be 5'9 7/8. And I said, well, this isn't going to work. So one day I heard Chula Vista was hiring. I went down to Chula Vista, and of course, after passing the test, they send you to the doctor. That's where you get measured. And the doctor says, "How tall are you?" I said, 5'10". He said, "Okay," wrote that down. How much you weigh? I told him that too. So I lied, but I got hired. It all worked out, really. But this was 1958 when I first got hired. I got hired in October of 1958, but I couldn't start till January because they had no money. The city was broke. They had no money for police officers. Then, unfortunately, one of the police officers who I replaced got killed in a car wreck at 3rd Avenue and J Street when he hit a fire truck. They were both going to the same call. But when I went on the department, no one would go on and talk to me. And I couldn't understand why. But then I found out that that officer's name was Cox. So it didn't go on. Didn't go over very well with some of the other officers. But anyway, I made it through my training. I rode with another officer for 3 months. And then I went to the academy after I was on the department for 6 months. And they actually had me out in the field working my own beat, which was a real hardship because I'd go from to the academy at 8 o'clock in the morning, get out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but I was working the evening watch, so I had to go straight from the academy to work till midnight. And at that time, Shirley and I were living in Mission Beach. By the time I got home, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Then I had to be back in at 8 o'clock in the morning. And my days off were Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and that was court days. I had to go to court. So that 6 months, 16 weeks I was in training was a real hardship. But I got through it. Then I went back to the department and, worked all the beats. Morning shift, evening shift, midnight watch. I worked midnights for 7 years straight. And by then we had 3 kids. Trying to keep them quiet while I slept from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon was a job I left to my friend, and she did a great job. But the kids, as they grew up, we had 3 children. Billy Jr., Pam, who's here, and Stephen, who we've all been praying for. But they all said, we'll never be a cop because Dad's never home. You know, you're never home when you're a cop. Well, that's true. A lot of that is true. And I missed a lot of ball games and scouts and things like that, but I had a great companion that took care of me. But anyway, as I progressed in the department, I made sergeant. They put me in detectives. I worked all of the detective assignments from homicide down to the youth bureau. And I think I was a good detective. I've heard from other people that I was pretty good that worked with me. At least I solved all my major crimes that was assigned to me. And I did that. The department then appointed me as the sergeant in charge of the youth bureau. And that was the beginning of a relationship with the kids that was amazing. I never knew how many so-called bad kids were out there. But in reality, when you look at the situation, only a very minute amount was bad. The rest of them just messed up like me. They lied. They said they could drive when they couldn't. Or,
Got gas.
Yeah, yes. I said, well, we've got to figure out a way to reach the kids that we can reach. There are some you can't, but they're 99% you can. So I went to the chief and told him what I wanted to do, and he said, do it. So what we did, we started assigning each officer to a section, each officer in the youth bureau to a junior high and a high school and the elementary schools that fed that school. So they could be in contact with the very kids that they were seeing. And that worked out pretty good, but we took it a step further. We decided that we didn't want to plug these kids into the juvenile justice system. We could divert them into a community outreach program, which we provided. A friend of mine was a newscaster in Los Angeles. I went to him and we put together a 30-minute film about the juvenile justice system and about how you could avoid it. And if we picked a kid up and we didn't feel he belonged in the system, we made he and his parents go to this class where we showed this film, and so we could talk to the kids. And we had 2 professional counselors, civilian counselors, in our youth bureau. And at one time in the state of California, Chula Vista had the largest juvenile division per population in the state. And eventually I joined the California State Juvenile Officers Association and became a board of directors member, and found out things that were going on all over the state that didn't make sense, that every department was doing differently. So I developed a program called the Interagency Committee And we started it here in San Diego, and we met once a month with members from the schools, social services, probation, and law enforcement, from every law enforcement in the San Diego County. We met once a month to discuss problems, and we hashed out all of our differences. And we always knew if we had a problem, like with social services, we had a phone number to call. And we could call someone at that agency or call that our contact person, and we were able to just smooth things out in a second. Well, I finally incorporated that statewide, and it made a big difference. The other thing that I learned was that every year the legislators pass laws that impact kids. But you only found out about it when it happened. So I developed a legislative program that I put on in 3 sections of the state, northern, central, and southern, for 1-week training period on the new laws when they came out every year. And that way we were to stay ahead of any problem areas. Because you had to handle juveniles in a certain way in the department and out of the department. And you had to know what those rules were or you were in deep trouble. So I received many commendations from all over the state regarding that program. The Attorney General of California, Director of Criminal Justice Planning, and the Director of Public Education from the state decided that they wanted to make a partnership with law enforcement to develop programs between law enforcement and the schools. And ironically, I was the first officer chosen to join that committee, and worked in it for many, many years, and traveled all over the state putting on conferences and programs. And thank God I had an understanding chief who let me go. Maybe he wanted me to go away, I don't know. Anyway, he always let me go. So anyway, every year the juvenile officers held a state conference, and we would always attend because I was on the board of directors. And then when it was over with, Shirley always met me on Friday at whatever city or place we were at. We were at Yosemite, Palm Springs, somewhere else. And she would meet me on Friday, and we'd spend the weekend there, which was great. But at one conference, totally unsuspecting to me, I received an award from the University of Southern California called the Dan Pursuit Award. And it was given to the police officer in the state of California that contributed the most. I'm sorry. Contributed the most to the juvenile justice system. And I'm very, very proud of that award. The other thing that I'm super proud of is my family. I never thought the kids that always said they would not be cops became cops. And my oldest son, Billy, probably the smartest police officer that I've ever known. He worked at Chula Vista, which was good. I got to work with him for a while. He wrote all the manuals for the Chula Vista Police Department, considering how officers should work and how they should act and all of that. He wrote the manuals. He had a radio program on Saturday mornings for 2 hours with Paul Finks, the past district attorney of San Diego County. They had a radio program where they talked about the criminal justice system. And they did that for 2 years. Then he became, he was on the board of directors. There's a new system out now, and I got to get it right. I think I got it. Yeah.
Billy, we have 10 minutes, please. 10
Oh,
minutes.
oh, okay.
Thank you.
It says advanced and master examiner training for computer voice stress analysis. Now they can tell by talking to someone if you're lying or not. I said, my God, I'm glad it wasn't when they were kids. Because I told some good stories to them. But anyway, he wrote the manual for this. And is on it's now used worldwide by the military and by law enforcement. Instead of lie detector tests, they do this voice stress analysis. And I have to admit, in the back, on his bio page, he writes, after he talks about himself, to my father, retired Police Lieutenant Billy Cox, who installed in me the knowledge that excellent is the only standard that applies to law enforcement. So anyway, that was my police history.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, everybody's hearing your amazing story. You've had incredible experiences, coincidences, irony, God. What would you say across your life? When have you felt God working in your life most, and why?
Well, I think the first time was in 1970. I had to have open heart surgery. And Pastor Egdahl was there when I was going into surgery. But before that time, I was only concentrating on my life and my job. And it seemed after I had the surgery and I came out of it, now you find me crying at the drop of a hat. I'd never done that before, never. So when you talk about change, this morning the pastor talked about change. And I feel that my life was changed then. Also, I was the first adult baptized in the new sanctuary. So, and Shirley and I have been members since 1965. I've been on the council 4 or 5 times. I've lost track. But I think, and I participated in many of the summer Sunday school programs and vacation Bible school. Pastor Chuck and I used to have a routine, and I won't say it's funny, but it was funny at the time because he's a real character. And I turned out to be a real character too, so we got along good together anyway. But anyway, after that, I retired, 1987. Shirley still worked for 6 years after I retired. But I retired and learned how to play golf good. I shouldn't say good. I'm lying again. I learned how to play golf. Let's just put it there. After a few years, Shirley and I traveled the world after she retired, and we had great times. But then I was sitting around home one day, and one of the great grandkids, we have 6 great grandkids. One of them came, we were talking, and I said, "Oh boy, you guys are getting ready to go to school. You're ready for kindergarten." "Yeah, but we're afraid, Grandpa." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go with you." So I did. I went to kindergarten class with them. I met the teacher, Miss Carson, and I said, "Can I volunteer in your class?" She said, "Sure." So I did. 7 years I worked in the kindergarten class. The grandkids all went on 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Now they're in high school, but they went on. But my experience with the kids, the kindergarten kids, I learned a lot since I never went to kindergarten. But I learned a lot. And in that process, I've written 2 books. This is the first one I wrote. It's called "Who Said That?" Every night when I'd come home, I'd write on a 3x5 card what went on in the classroom. Because you cannot believe. Carol can, she was a teacher. Dorothy can, she was a teacher. But you cannot believe what is said in that classroom. Now, some of it is not available for print. It's like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, what happens in the classroom stays in the classroom. But anyway, I did write 2 books. The first one was "Who Said That?" And the second one is not in print yet, but it's called "Kindergarten Tales." And it's about life in a kindergarten class, starting back in the one-room school days. And I did the research at the Kansas Historical Society and the Chanute, Kansas Historical Museum. And so it's really ready to go. Unfortunately, my photographer, he's my neighbor and my friend, is down with Alzheimer's. And he took all the pictures. We took at least 400 pictures for this book. And he can't find them on his computer. And I don't have any of them. So I'm waiting, hoping he has better days ahead and that we eventually get it ironed out and I'll be able to put this one in publication. But it's a work, and I had some of my great granddaughters did the drawings for the book. So I want to get it in print.
Billy, can I ask you one more question?
Absolutely.
Because we're almost at time. You've done a lot. You've been through a lot. From the moment you were born,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You've been an advocate, a huge advocate, across your life, for yourself, for your sister when you got her job, all the way through your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. 89 years.
Yes.
It's a lot of years. It's a lot of experience. So looking at all of that, all you've been through, the changes you've been through, what is some advice that you would give to all of us, different ages, different stages? What's a nugget of gold from those 89 years?
Well, I think one thing that comes to mind is what Pastor Egdahl once told. I had to confess to him one day that I was just up to my ears in crime cases. And I asked him, because he was on the city council at that time, I said, Pastor, how do you keep up with all you do? How do you manage it all? And he told me, and I'm telling you, he said, the more I do, the more I can do. So if you think about that in life, you will find the more you do, the more you can do. And I took that to heart. And and never give up. You know, like I say, I tried how many police departments before I got hired. They didn't know what they were missing.
They didn't. They didn't know.
But I was too short.
I want to thank you for your time. You can keep talking. We're going to stop the Facebook recording. Sherry, if you want to say.
Yeah, I really I wanted to tell you one other thing, and I forgot.
I'm sorry, we have been recording to Facebook. We have a recording of everything up to now.